My daughter-in-law had been drugging my cider for 11 months. I discovered it 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, sitting in my favorite armchair, pretending the dizziness hadn't returned. Lydia thought I was drifting off when she leaned toward my son and whispered, "After Thanksgiving, we'll send her to Maple Grove. They've got a bed ready." "Are you sure about this?" Michael asked quietly. "Look at her," she hissed, hands shaking, staring at nothing. "Once she's admitted, we get power of attorney, and the house is ours. 1.2 million, free and clear." I kept my breathing steady, even as the air turned sharp in my throat. She had no idea I'd stopped drinking her cider weeks ago. No idea I'd switched the mugs. No idea I'd recorded every word. If you've ever watched someone you trusted smile while planning your disappearance, you'll understand what came next. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is letting people like that walk straight into their own trap. I let her think I was slipping. That was the secret. Every morning I'd shuffle into the kitchen, robe half-tied, hair a little undone, the perfect picture of a fading mind. Vanessa would smile that sugar-coated smile. "Good morning, Mom. Sit down. I'll fix your tea." Her tone always dipped on the word tea, like guilt lived in her throat. I'd take one sip, then another, pretend the warmth calmed me. When she turned away, I'd pour the rest into the flower pot by the window. The soil darkened each morning. By the end of the week, the leaves had curled, edges brown, like the truth trying to show itself. Vanessa never noticed. She was too busy watching me wobble. So I gave her a show. A dropped spoon, a confused sentence, a stumble on the stairs. "She's getting worse," I heard her whisper to Michael. "It won't be long now." I smiled behind the doorway, because it was working. That night, when the house went still, I sat by my vanity, unscrewed a small glass vial from my late husband's old kit, and tilted the teacup over it. Each drop hit the glass like a countdown. The smell was bitter, chemical, wrong. I labeled it Sample 1. The next day, Sample 2, then 3. I hid them in a velvet jewelry box beside my wedding ring. Proof beside loyalty. Elaine Brooks, my friend from the university, now ran a small private lab downtown. She used to grade my essays. Now she tests my tea. "Send them overnight," she told me. "And Lydia, don't drink another drop." I sealed the vials in a padded envelope, pressed the tape shut, and watched the mailman drive away. Under the soft ticking of the clock, I whispered, "Sometimes, to prove you're alive, you pretend to die a little." Vanessa wanted control. I gave her the illusion of it. That morning, she posted a picture of me on Facebook, sitting on the porch, blanket on my shoulders, eyes unfocused toward the trees. The caption read, "Caring for Mom isn't easy, but love makes it worth it." Within minutes, the comments poured in. "You're such an angel, Vanessa. Your mother-in-law is lucky to have you." Even our neighbor, Mrs. Holbrook, dropped off a casserole that afternoon, saying, "You've raised such a wonderful son." I smiled, thanked her softly, and pressed the small pendant on my necklace. The red light blinked once. The camera was rolling. I wasn't losing control. I was collecting it. When Michael came home, he carried a folder in his hand. His eyes were tired, his voice rehearsed. "Mom, Vanessa and I thought we should help you manage your finances, just so you can relax." He slid a form across the table. Power of attorney. Every line already filled in. Every box already ticked. I held the pen steady as I could. Then, deliberately, I signed 3 millimeters off the line. Every signature is a trap when you know how to draw the lines. Vanessa stood behind him, arms crossed, smile tight. "Perfect, Mom," she said. "We'll take care of everything." "I know you will," I answered, catching her reflection in the cabinet glass behind her. That evening, she went to the bank again, telling the clerk how poor Lydia can't remember her own address. I recorded every word from the car, the necklace cam glinting faintly under the dashboard light. She wanted control. I gave her a paper rope. Later that night, I took photos of each document, every shaky signature, and texted them to Elaine with one note. "Keep these safe." The click of my phone camera sounded like justice learning to breathe. The night before Thanksgiving, the house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock. I sat in the study, reviewing the footage from my necklace camera. Vanessa's voice filled the room, cold, clear, proud. Once she's in the nursing home, we'll list the house immediately. 1.2 million, free and clear. Her words played over the image of my own face on screen, tired, fragile, but focused. I rewound the clip, then pressed save. The timestamp was perfect. I called Detective Carla from my landline. "Thanksgiving dinner, don't be late." Her voice was steady. "You sure you want to do this, Mrs. Monroe?" "I'm sure," I said. "Let her think she's hosting a celebration." After I hung up, I pulled out an old film box from my husband's shelf. It still had a faded label, Family Reel, 1984. I slipped the USB drive inside, sealed it, and placed it in the drawer under the television. It looked harmless, nostalgic even. They wanted to make me disappear. I'll let them vanish instead. I walked to the window. Outside, the maple trees had turned gold, their leaves swirling in the wind. Across the street, a faint light glowed from the sold sign planted on the lawn. They didn't know I'd changed everything. They thought I was waiting for permission to leave. I smiled at my own reflection in the glass, calm, still, knowing. Tomorrow, when they raised their glasses and toasted to family, I'd play my own family video. And it wouldn't be for memories. It would be for evidence. My phone said no signal. I held it up to the window, waiting for a bar that never came. Vanessa walked in, calm as always. "I called the provider," she said. "They told me your plan expired. I'll fix it." Her voice was sweet, too sweet. She erased my voice line by line, but silence can be saved. That night, I opened the drawer under the old landline, the one with dust in the buttons. I pulled out a small recorder from my sewing kit, just big enough to hide behind a picture frame. I plugged the wire into the back of the phone. The red light blinked once, small and quiet. The next morning, Vanessa called Dr. Rowan. "Yes, doctor," she said softly. "She's been wandering again. I found her standing outside at midnight." Each word was caught, every lie recorded. The red light blinked again, patient as a heartbeat. Truth doesn't shout. It waits, blinking. Later, she came to my room. Her reflection appeared beside mine in the window. "Don't worry, Mom," she said. "I'll take care of everything." Care, her favorite word. Mine was evidence. When she left, I opened the drawer and saved the file. Wandering Lie 001 MP3. The folder glowed faintly in the dark like a quiet confession. The wind brushed through the curtains. The house made its small, tired sounds. She thought she had taken my words away. But I was the one writing the story now. Oliver came by just before noon. His sneakers squeaked across the kitchen floor. "Mom says you're tired, Grandma," he said, dropping his backpack by the chair. "Then she must be right," I told him. "I've been dreaming too much lately." He grinned, opened the cookie tin on the counter. "Can I have one?" "Of course." He reached inside and froze. Something small was hidden under the cookies, a silver USB wrapped in tape. "What's this?" he asked. Children see what adults are paid to ignore. I took his hand and placed the drive back in it. "A gift," I said, "for Aunt Elaine. You remember her? The science lady?" "That's the one. Give it to her quietly. Don't tell anyone." He nodded, serious, as if we shared a secret that mattered. Later that day, Elaine opened the drive in her office. The screen lit up with Vanessa's face, grinding white pills into tea, glancing over her shoulder, smiling to herself. Elaine covered her mouth, then called me. "Lydia, it's Ativan." "High dose. Enough to keep you sedated for weeks." I sat by the window, watching the light crawl across the table. The vase beside me held dried flowers. One petal loosened and fell, turning to dust before it touched the floor. Rot always starts sweet. But light makes it visible. Oliver came running back, breathless from feeding the neighbor's dog. Grandma, can I come again tomorrow? Of course, darling, I said. Just remember where we keep the truth. He smiled, proud and innocent. When he left, the air felt lighter. The house wasn't quiet anymore. It was waiting. The USB sat on the table, catching the afternoon light. It didn't sparkle. It glowed. Proof isn't loud. It simply refuses to die. The doorbell rang just after 9. Vanessa opened it with a perfect smile. Dr. Rowan, thank you for coming, she said softly. Her voice carried that same honeyed calm she used when lying. He stepped inside, dark coat still dusted with frost. His briefcase clicked open as he glanced around the living room. Everything looked staged. Tea tray, folded blanket, polished wood. I stood near the window, my hands resting on the armchair. The vase beside me caught the light. It looked like decoration. It wasn't. Vanessa guided him toward me. She forgets my name sometimes, she said gently. Her tone was syrup. Her eyes were calculation. I poured tea into his cup, careful not to spill. Would you like sugar? I asked. He smiled politely. Just 1 spoon, thank you. He turned his pen between his fingers. Lydia, can you tell me what day it is? I looked at the frost edging the glass. Thursday, November 9th. The frost came early this year. He nodded, scribbling a note. Vanessa folded her arms. She also confuses her medication, she added. The camera in the vase blinked once, catching her reflection in the porcelain. They spoke about me as if I wasn't in the room, so I listened. He asked another question, something about my appetite. I answered clearly, evenly, without pause. Vanessa shifted, disappointed I hadn't stumbled. Her hand brushed the back of his chair, casual, claiming. He smiled again, that gentle, professional smile people wear when they think they know the truth. Kindness is never evidence. Outside, a branch tapped against the window pane. The frost glimmered like a curtain of glass between their words and mine. He closed his notebook. Well, she seems coherent today, he said. Vanessa's laugh was light, almost rehearsed. It comes and goes. He nodded again, reaching for his coat. As they walked to the door, I straightened the vase slightly, making sure the lens had one last clear shot. Thank you, doctor, I said. He turned, surprised by my calm. I'll expect your report, and mine. He blinked, unsure what I meant. Vanessa hurried him out with one more sweet thank you. When the door closed, the quiet felt clean. The tea had gone cold, untouched. I carried the cup to the sink, watching the steam fade against the glass. They thought they had examined me, but the only thing diagnosed today was deceit. The morning air was sharp, the kind that made every sound too clear. Vanessa stood in the backyard, folding a blanket, her voice light. Careful, Mom. That rope's been loose for weeks. The clothesline hung low between 2 wooden posts, swaying a little in the wind. I looked at it and smiled to myself. It hadn't. I tied it this morning. She stepped closer, pretending to adjust the line. You should really stop doing laundry alone, she said. Her words were soft, but her eyes measured the distance between us. I took one more step forward. My slipper brushed the edge of the line. The loop slipped free, just enough to catch my wrist. I let my body fall sideways onto the grass. The sound was small, a dull thud swallowed by the cold air. Vanessa gasped, rushing toward me. You see, we can't leave you alone, she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. I held my breath, the camera sewn into my button, recording every syllable. My heart beat once, calm and steady. She brushed the dirt from my sleeve, her hand shaking in all the right ways. We'll get you checked out. I told Michael this would happen. I nodded faintly, let my head tilt as if dizzy. Maybe you're right, I whispered. The red light blinked once, then twice. She helped me back to the chair, still murmuring about safety. I waited until the door closed behind her. Then I sat up, brushed the grass from my skirt, and pressed play. Her voice echoed back through the static. We can't leave her alone. The tone was perfect, self-incriminating, rehearsed, captured. I sent the file to Elaine with a single text. Physical incident logged. The screen glowed pale in my palm. Lies are ropes too. They tighten when you pull. When fear ends, structure begins. I turned on my old laptop, its fan humming like an old friend. The blue light washed over my hands as I opened the folder marked Temp. Dozens of files stared back at me. Videos, audio logs, photos, every piece of a quiet war. I created a new folder and named it Archive 1. Each file dropped inside with a soft click, one after another, like heartbeats finding order. I typed a password, William, 1972. His name, the year we built this house. A small tribute to the man who taught me to keep records, not secrets. When the progress bar reached the end, I sent a copy to Elaine using the encrypted link she'd given me. Keep it mirrored, I wrote, offline and off-site. Then I called Oliver. Sweetheart, I said, can you keep a small drive at school? In your locker. He didn't even ask why. Sure, Grandma, I'll hide it under my books. His trust felt heavier than the files I was sending him. Across the house, Vanessa's voice drifted through the walls. She's worse this week, she told someone on the phone. I didn't need to hear the rest. I was already saving her words under a new file name. She lied louder. I organized quieter. I printed a single label and stuck it on the last USB drive, Thanksgiving project. The words looked almost cheerful. I placed it inside the cookie tin, the same one that once held the proof Oliver found. The lid shut with a soft click. The reflection of the metal caught my face, calm, deliberate, unafraid. Elaine's face appeared on the screen, her expression tight. Lydia, it's Ativan, she said. Repeated doses, enough to keep you docile. I said nothing at first. The body heals, but evidence remembers. The sound of the sea wind brushed faintly through the window as I nodded once. Thank you, Elaine. That's all I needed. After the call ended, I emptied every pill bottle into the sink. The tablets hit the porcelain like small stones. I turned on the tap and watched them swirl down the drain, white circles dissolving into nothing. Then I reached for the jar of crushed vitamins I'd prepared weeks earlier. The powder was faintly sweet, harmless, convincing. Vanessa came in a few minutes later, tray balanced in her hands. "Time for your meds, Mom," she said brightly. Her smile stretched too wide. I lifted the glass, swallowed the harmless powder, and smiled back. Deception has flavors too. Mine tasted like victory. She lingered, eyes scanning me for signs of confusion. I gave her one. A small blink, a pause, the kind of weakness she adored. When she finally left, the door closing with a soft click, I opened the drawer beside my bed. The wedding ring still sat in its case next to an empty notebook. I tore a page from the back and wrote a single line, then I folded it twice and slipped it into the drawer beside the ring. Pretending weakness requires strength, more than they'll ever know. Outside, the first snow began to fall. The flakes clung to the glass, melting slow like time softening its edge. The bottle lay empty on the counter, label peeled, lid open. I watched the reflection of the snow in its curve. White, cold, clean. Winter had come early. Thanksgiving morning carried the smell of cinnamon and quiet plans. The house glowed under that soft amber light, where everything looked kind, but wasn't. Vanessa's laughter floated through the kitchen, polished, pretty, practiced. I sat at the dining table, the sunlight cutting across the silverware like a warning. She turned, wiping her hands on a towel. "Mom, just sit. I'll handle everything," she said, with that gentle finality that sounded like care. I blinked slowly, feigning the drift she expected. "What are we celebrating again?" I asked, letting my voice quiver at the edge. She smiled wide, too fast, too bright. "Thanksgiving, remember?" I nodded, a weak laugh under my breath. She laughed louder. I recorded. The table was dressed like a stage, pumpkin pie cooling, candles trimmed low, napkins folded to hide the lens of the camera resting inside a walnut shell. I had spent the night before setting them all, each angle designed to remember what they would forget. The vase near the window held more than flowers. Its stem concealed another eye, waiting, patient. I reached for it as if adjusting the bouquet. The light blinked once. Oliver came in carrying plates, small hands careful not to clatter. "Grandma," he whispered, "is it working?" I smiled. "Perfectly, sweetheart." His innocence steadied me more than courage ever could. He laid the plates down, his face half shadowed by the morning sun. He was the only one who knew, the only one I could still trust. Vanessa hummed as she basted the turkey, her voice syrup-sweet, her posture theatrical. "Everything looks perfect," she said, "just like a real family again." Her words lingered, hollow as air. I straightened my scarf, making sure the microphone beneath the fabric wasn't visible. "You've done beautifully, dear," I said softly, the tremor in my tone rehearsed to perfection. She smiled, pleased, mistaking fragility for surrender. Michael entered quietly, his tie undone, eyes uncertain. He placed the cider jug on the counter, avoiding my gaze. The boy I raised had learned silence from me, but not its purpose. Vanessa brushed his arm, whispering something I couldn't hear. I didn't need to. She looked like the kind of woman who believed winning was permanent. The scent of roasted apples filled the air. I placed the silver tray on the table, careful not to let it slip. Beneath its polished underside lay the golden USB, my small, glittering insurance policy. I set it down right in front of her favorite seat. "Here?" Oliver asked softly. "Yes," I said, "right there." They thought I forgot. I remembered every lie. The room glimmered in quiet gold, the reflection of the chandelier dancing across the silver knives. Each glint was another eye. Vanessa carried the turkey in both hands, smiling as though she were being watched by a better world. "It's time to eat," she said, placing the dish in the center. The skin shimmered under the light. Perfect. False. I lifted my cup, my finger steady. "Then let's feast." The sound of the clock ticked behind her, like a metronome for deceit. She didn't know that every smile, every glance, every sentence had already been written down. The morning she planned for my erasure was already my masterpiece. The table gleamed beneath the light, a perfect lie of comfort. The smell of roasted apples and honeyed bread lingered in the air. Vanessa lifted her glass of cider, smiling wide enough to hide her intent. "To family," she said softly, "and to taking care of each other." The guests echoed her cheer, their voices folding into one polite harmony. I raised my cup, keeping my eyes on her hands. Even celebration has a pulse when danger sits beside it. Michael sat to her left, his shoulders tight, his glass untouched. He glanced at me but said nothing. I could feel the hesitation pressing against the room like fog. Vanessa turned the conversation with perfect grace, asking about neighbors, weather, the news. She was building calm before her strike. The dessert tray waited on the counter, pumpkin pie, whipped cream, small distractions lined like soldiers. "Before dessert," she said, "a small formality." She slid a stack of papers from her leather folder, placing them right beside my plate. Michael frowned. "Now?" She smiled, that soft, calculated warmth she used for sympathy. "It's just a care agreement, honey. You know, so your mother can relax, so we can help her manage everything properly." I watched her lips move, the words dripping with sugar, the aftertaste metallic. The pen beside my plate gleamed under the light, its small red tip already blinking. Every word, every breath, recorded. I picked it up slowly, letting my hand tremble. "Where should I sign?" "Right here, Mom." Her nails tapped the paper twice. "You're such a blessing, you know that?" I smiled faintly, nodded, and lowered the pen. My letters curved, soft, deliberate. I signed my name carefully. 3 letters reversed, 1 stroke missing. The signature looked perfect until the law saw it. I handed the pen back with a small sigh. "You're thorough, dear." Vanessa beamed, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "You have no idea how much this means." I looked at her, steady. "More than you think." Michael's voice cracked softly. "Mom, do you want me to read it first?" I shook my head. "It's all right, dear. I trust her." The words left my mouth with a flavor she didn't recognize. Steel beneath the calm. She gathered the papers, sliding them neatly into her folder. "All done," she said brightly. "Now we can celebrate properly." Oliver caught my eye across the table, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He knew. He always did. The camera inside the pendant around my neck blinked once. The sound was quieter than breathing. The guests lifted their forks again, laughter resuming like a song rehearsed too many times. Vanessa poured more cider, her voice light, her future already sealed in ink. They celebrated. I documented. The candles flickered low, their wax pooling slowly at the base. Across the glass I could see my reflection. Steady, clear, untrembling. The signature on that page would never hold. It wasn't binding, it was bait. The plates were cleared. The laughter softened. The house fell into that strange quiet that comes when something unspoken hovers in the air. Vanessa stood at the head of the table, her napkin folded perfectly in her hands. The gold from the chandelier painted her face in false warmth. "Michael," she said gently, "it's time. Your mom needs professional care now. We've done all we can." Michael looked down at his plate. His thumb traced the edge of his glass, a small sound against the silence. "Vanessa, maybe we can wait until after the holidays." She smiled, patient, composed. "No, darling, it's not safe anymore. She almost fell again yesterday." We both saw it. Her voice wrapped itself in compassion, but the edges were sharp. I rose slowly, one hand on the chair, the other steady on the table. "Before dessert," I said, "let's watch something, a family video I made." She blinked, surprised. "Now? Mom, maybe after—" "Now," I repeated. The room shifted. The air thickened. I picked up the remote from the silver tray, pressed play. The television hummed to life, lights spilling across the walls. For a moment, only static filled the room. Then, sound. Vanessa's voice. Clear. Recorded. "Once she's in care, the house is ours. 1.2 million. Free and clear." The words slid through the air like glass breaking. Michael froze. Oliver's small hand gripped the tablecloth. Vanessa's mouth opened, but no sound came. "That's fake," she said quickly. "That's edited." I tilted my head slightly. "Then listen carefully." The screen flickered again. Another clip. Her hand stirring tea. White powder dissolving. Her voice humming softly. The camera caught her reflection in the spoon, her smile. Unguarded. Michael's voice cracked. "Mom, you knew?" I nodded once. Every sip told me. The room went cold. The candle flames shivered. Vanessa lunged forward, reaching for the remote, but Oliver moved first. His hand landed on hers, firm. "Don't," he said quietly. His voice trembled, but his eyes didn't. Vanessa's breath came fast. "Michael, she's setting me up. She's sick." Michael's shoulders sagged. "Stop." The next video played automatically. Her voice again, whispering into the phone. "Yes, doctor. She's been wandering at night. We'll move her soon." The footage froze on her face, smiling, confident, certain she'd never be seen. I looked at her across the table. "Sweetheart," I said softly. "Dessert's on pause." No one spoke. Even the clock seemed to stop. She turned toward Michael, desperate. "You believe me, right?" He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the screen, on the woman he thought he knew. I poured another glass of cider, the liquid golden under the light. "They wanted power," I said. "I kept proof." Vanessa stood motionless, her breath shallow, her hands trembling near her sides. The television screen dimmed, then darkened completely. In the silence that followed, only her heartbeat seemed loud enough to hear. Oliver looked at me, eyes wide, as if realizing what truth actually costs. I smiled faintly. Every trap ends the same way. Silence before truth. The wind outside pressed against the windows. The candles guttered low. The room, once warm, had turned into a courtroom, and I didn't need to say another word. Vanessa's voice broke first. "You edited that! You spliced it together! She doesn't know what she's doing!" The words hit the air like broken glass. She turned toward Michael, eyes wild. "She's confused, you know that. She's sick." Michael's voice was quiet, worn. "Then why is your name on the deed?" His words didn't rise. They didn't need to. Truth doesn't shout. It settles. Vanessa froze, her mouth open, her face paling under the chandelier's light. No, that's different. Michael, I was helping." "Helping who?" he asked, his tone empty, flat. The silence stretched. I stood, my chair sliding back against the hardwood. The sound echoed like punctuation. "You'll want to get that," I said softly. A knock had already sounded from the front door. Vanessa flinched. "Who's that?" "Go see," I said. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, the cold air following them. One spoke, steady, practiced. "Mrs. Vanessa Hartman?" She hesitated. "Yes?" "You're under arrest for elder abuse and financial fraud." Her lips parted. "This is my home!" I lifted my glass of cider, letting the light pass through it. "Was!" She turned toward me, her eyes wide, desperate. You did this!" I took a sip. "You did." The taller officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us." Michael backed away from the table, hands in his hair, face drained. "I didn't know," he said. "I know," I told him, "but knowing late isn't the same as not knowing at all." Vanessa shook her head, her voice cracking. "You can't prove—" The shorter officer lifted the evidence folder. "We already have it. Justice wears a badge today." Vanessa stumbled as they took her hands, her bracelet clinking against the cuffs. She turned once more toward me. "You think this makes you right?" "I don't think," I said. "I remember." The officers guided her toward the doorway. The light from the porch spilled across the floor, pale and cold. The sound of her heels faded with every step until only the wind answered. Michael's eyes were red. "Mom, I'm so sorry." "Apology accepted," I said quietly. "Lesson pending." He nodded, tears he couldn't hide anymore. "I didn't see it." "You will now," I said. "That's how vision works." Oliver crept closer, his small hand finding mine. "Are you okay, Grandma?" I looked down at him. "I am now." We stood together by the window. Outside, the light from the patrol car flickered across the lawn. Blue, red, blue again. The cider glass in my hand caught the color and threw it back like a prism. For a long moment, no one spoke. Michael leaned against the wall, his voice barely above a whisper. "What happens now?" I smiled faintly. "Now we clean the table." He almost laughed, almost cried. "You're unbelievable." "No," I said. "Just awake." The officer's car rolled away, the sound of tires soft against the gravel. The wind carried the faint scent of apples from the kitchen. The house exhaled. I turned off the television. The screen went black. Our reflections lingered a moment. Mine calm, Michael's uncertain, Oliver's small hand still in mine. Thanksgiving used to mean thanks. This year, evidence. The clock ticked once. They called it a statement. I called it the truth. Morning light spilled through the blinds of the precinct, thin and pale. The air smelled of paper and old coffee. I sat at the long metal table, my coat folded neatly over the back of the chair. A stack of documents waited in front of me, thick, official, weighty. The officer across the desk adjusted his pen. "Take your time, ma'am." His voice was kind, rehearsed, careful not to echo. I picked up the first page. My hands didn't shake this time. The ink looked steady, the margins square. Every word was a piece of something I had carried alone for too long. The record began with dates, times, and incidents, each one checked and verified. The camera footage, the phone recordings, the signatures. My house had been a courtroom before this day began. I read every line aloud, slowly, methodically. The words didn't feel heavy anymore. They felt right. When I reached the end of the third page, I paused to correct a misspelled name. My own. My name, spelled right this time. It looked cleaner than I remembered. Lighter, almost. The officer nodded. "Whenever you're ready." His eyes flicked toward the clock, then back at me. I signed the final line, pressing down just enough to leave a deep groove in the paper. The sound of the pen gliding across the surface was quiet, final, like a thread being cut. Through the glass wall, I saw Michael standing in the hallway, his hat in his hands, his shoulders rounded. He hadn't said a word since we walked in. He stared at the floor, ashamed, waiting for a version of me he could understand again. I didn't call him in. Some distances need to stay measured. I capped the pen, handed it to the officer. "Keep that," I said. "It writes better than it lies." He smiled faintly, unsure if I meant it as a joke. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. He slid the statement into a manila envelope and sealed it with a firm press. The tape hissed softly, sticking in one smooth motion. The sound filled the room more than any applause could have. I exhaled slowly, watching sunlight fall across the folder. "When justice breathes," I said, mostly to myself, "it sounds like paper." The officer looked up, puzzled, but didn't ask. He stood, straightened the stack of forms, and left the room. The door clicked shut behind him. The silence felt earned. I sat a moment longer, tracing the shadow of the light across the table. It was thin, delicate, fleeting. I gathered my coat, stood, and walked toward the door. Michael turned when he saw me. He didn't speak. Neither did I. The house looked smaller once I stopped fearing it. A week had passed since Thanksgiving, and the yard was quiet again. No cars in the driveway, no voices behind the walls, just the slow hum of winter pressing against the windows. I stood at the kitchen counter, reading the final offer one last time. $1.2 million, full cash. The numbers didn't surprise me. What did was how little they meant. The real estate truck pulled up in front of the porch. 2 agents stepped out, their smiles polite, practiced. "It's official, Mrs. Hartman," one of them said. "You've closed. Funds cleared this morning." I nodded, setting down my mug of tea. "Good," I said. "Make sure the sign faces the kitchen window." They carried the wooden post to the lawn, hammering it into the frozen soil. The metal letters caught the light. Sold. I watched it through the glass. Simple word, heavy history. The same window where I had once poured poison tea, now framing something finished. Michael appeared in the doorway, his voice low. "Mom, you're selling it?" He sounded younger, unsure, almost boyish. I turned to him. "I'm freeing it." He stepped inside, eyes scanning the half-empty shelves. "But it's our home." I smiled faintly. "Was. Homes are memories, not prisons." He didn't argue. His hands slipped into his pockets, the way his father used to when he'd said too much. "Where will you go?" he asked. "Somewhere with light," I said. I opened my laptop, signed the final electronic form. The golden pen I used had a soft click, the same one that once sealed my statement at the precinct. The sound was small but complete. The contract flashed green. Complete. I closed the lid. "Some homes keep people," I said. "Some people keep homes. I prefer neither." Michael leaned against the doorframe, still watching the yard. "It won't feel the same without you." I touched his arm gently. "That's the point." Outside, the wind picked up, stirring the leaves that had gathered under the hedge. The agents removed their gloves, shook my hand, and left. The truck rolled down the street, its reflection sliding across the window like a memory leaving. I lingered there a moment, staring at the faint outline of my face mirrored against the word sold. My own eyes stared back, calm, steady, nothing left to prove. Behind me, the house creaked, polite as a bow. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was simply ready to rest. I reached for my coat, slipping it on slowly. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon, though I hadn't baked anything in weeks. Some ghosts stay kind when you let them go. I turned off the lights one by one until only the window glow remained. Then I stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind me. The lock clicked. A clean sound. Final. Light as closure. As I walked down the path, the sold sign caught the setting sun, turning gold at the edges. For a second, it almost looked alive. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's filing correctly. The garden behind the house had turned brittle under the early frost. The roses, once heavy with scent, stood bare now, only thin stems reaching for the pale morning light. I walked slowly between them, pruning shears in my hand, trimming what was left. Each snip sounded deliberate, small, final. The air smelled of metal and dried leaves. On the wooden table by the fence sat a single white envelope. For Michael and Oliver. My handwriting looked steadier than I remembered. I brushed away a petal that had fallen across the name. The paper felt warm from the sun. I sat down on the bench, gloved hands resting for a moment before I began to write. The ink flowed easily, the pen moving without hesitation. Michael, I hope you see now, control isn't love. I paused, staring at the garden. A robin hopped along the path, unbothered by my presence. And Oliver, I continued, always keep your camera running. The truth needs apprentices. The words came slow, but not heavy. There was no anger left, no need to correct the past, just a quiet desire to leave it tidy. I folded the letter once, then again. The sound of the crease was crisp, gentle. I sealed the flap with the tip of my thumb and placed it beside the last rose still blooming. A single stubborn flower, pale gold, leaning toward the light. Some stories need witnesses. Some just need to end. I leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment. The chair creaked softly beneath me. The wind moved through the empty stems, carrying a dry rustle like whispering paper. The air was cool, but not cold. On the table, next to the letter, was a teacup I hadn't touched. The surface had gone still, the reflection clear enough to show my face, a few lines deeper perhaps, a few fears lighter. I lifted the cup and looked at the sky inside it, silver and clouded, like a mirror for what stays. Peace doesn't arrive loud, it just settles. A small wind chime near the gate trembled, its notes faint and bright. I smiled. It had been silent since November. Even silence returns when it's forgiven. I looked down at the letter once more, tracing the edge of the envelope with my gloved finger. It felt good to leave something behind that didn't demand to be found. When I stood, the garden seemed larger, the air seemed newer. The frost along the fence sparkled where the light caught it. I carried the pruning shears back to the shed, closing the latch gently. Before I went inside, I turned once more toward the rose. It bowed slightly under its own weight, beautiful in its defiance. I whispered a small goodbye, to it, to the house, to everything that had already been written. The letter stayed on the table, white against the dark wood, waiting for morning to find it. They called me a victim. I preferred architect. A month after the arrest, winter softened around Cape Cod. The air still carried salt, but it no longer stung. The new building stood at the corner of Willow and Grant, 2 stories of glass and light, framed by pale birch beams. The sign outside read, in gold letters, Golden Grace Foundation, for Elder Justice. The letters shone faintly against the morning frost. I watched the workers finish tying the last ribbon across the entryway, their breath visible in the chill. Inside, the lobby smelled of new paint and coffee. A small crowd gathered near the podium, local press, city council members, a few women with gray hair and steady eyes, faces that had stories too heavy for courts, too quiet for cameras. I recognized that silence. It had lived inside me once. A young reporter stepped forward, adjusting her microphone. "Mrs. Hartman, what inspired you to start this?" she asked. Her voice trembled with sincerity. I smiled faintly. "Experience," I said. The word didn't need decoration. "Mrs. Hartman, the press would like a few photos by the window." I nodded. The window faced the bay. Light poured through, slow and warm, painting everything in amber. I placed my hand against the glass. My reflection met mine. The same eyes, but clearer now, no longer shadowed by someone else's version of me. Outside, the sea moved quietly. The tide had risen just enough to touch the edge of the pier. "They said justice takes time," I murmured, half to myself. "It doesn't. It takes precision." The reporter didn't catch it. That was fine. Some truths are meant to stay personal. I turned slightly, the photographer snapping his shots. The sound of the shutter reminded me of my necklace camera. That small blink of light that once kept me alive. Proof has a strange afterlife. It becomes purpose. When the press began to leave, I stayed by the window. The air in the room hummed softly, the way it does when something right has finally settled. I thought of Elaine, still running her lab with quiet efficiency, of Detective Carla, who now sat on our advisory board, of Oliver, who'd asked if he could help design the Foundation's website. He'd chosen the slogan himself, "Truth is light." It was fitting. Outside, the wind over the bay picked up, rippling through the flagpole's cloth. Gold sunlight spilled across the marble floor. For the first time in years, I didn't feel watched. I felt seen. Justice isn't revenge. It's memory, written down properly. The words echoed inside me like a promise completed. I smiled faintly, fingertips still on the cold glass. The horizon shimmered under the winter sun. For a long moment, I just stood there, breathing, as if the air itself had been rewritten. Children always understand light before they understand shadow. I opened the drawer beneath and pulled out a photograph, the old house taken years before Vanessa arrived. In it, the windows shone like eyes that hadn't yet learned to close. William stood beside me, his arm around my shoulder, the garden behind us in bloom. I looked at the faces in the photo, both younger and unaware of what the years would demand. We looked certain then, not wise, just sure. I smiled. Certainty is always the first luxury life removes. The bay breeze slipped through the small gap in the window frame. It smelled of salt and cedar, faintly sweet. I thought of the roses behind the house, how even their dry stems had caught the frost and turned beautiful in surrender. That's what survival is, really, a kind of blooming that doesn't ask to be noticed. I took my coat from the rack, buttoned it slowly, and stepped out onto the terrace. The sound of the flag over the Foundation sign fluttered faintly. The words Golden Grace glowed pale gold under the evening light. Across the street, the cafe lights flickered on, one by one, like punctuation marks closing a long story. I leaned on the railing, watching the bay. A small sailboat drifted across the horizon, one white triangle moving toward dusk. The wind lifted a strand of my hair. I let it. When justice breathes, it sounds like this, quiet water against wood, a rhythm too calm to fear. Behind me, the building lights turned off automatically. The reflection on the glass faded until it was only me and the sea. I thought of all the words I'd written, statements, letters, files, and realized how silence carries the heaviest truth of all. The tide touched the pier and retreated, a soft sigh against the rocks. I whispered to it, not out of habit but out of gratitude, for endings that didn't demand applause, for peace that didn't need permission. The sky dimmed into lavender. A single star appeared over the bay. I closed my eyes for a breath, then another. Justice isn't loud. It never was. It simply waits for the light to come back. I turned toward the glass door, hand on the handle, ready to leave. But I looked back once more at the water. The same view William used to paint in his study, the same view that had watched me through everything. The wind moved again, colder now, softer still. I smiled. "Good evening," I said to the bay, "and thank you." Then I stepped inside, the door closing with a quiet click. Not an ending, just the final line of a story finally told. Morning returned with a calm that felt earned. The bay below the window was pale and smooth, almost white beneath the soft clouds. I had slept at the Foundation overnight, too many thoughts to carry home. When I opened the blinds, the horizon looked like a sheet of glass, unbroken. Somewhere out there, the world was moving fast again. In here, Everything had slowed enough to be understood. The front desk was quiet, except for the sound of papers being stacked. A young volunteer, Mara, I think her name was arranging folders labeled Case 01, Financial Neglect, Case 02, Coercion, each one heavier than its weight. She smiled at me shyly, the way people smile at someone who survived something they can't name. "Good morning, Mrs. Hartman." I nodded. "Morning, dear. Remember to log every call. Every detail matters." She nodded, serious. Truth needs discipline. I walked down the hallway lined with framed photographs. Not of me, but of others. Faces that had found their way through the same dark corridor of betrayal and come out with something worth keeping. Elaine's picture hung near the center, her smile caught in mid-laughter. Beneath it, a small plaque read, Scientific Integrity Award, 2025. She'd earned it the week before for her work in exposing controlled substance misuse in elder care. She sent me a copy of the report, signed in blue ink. "You were the spark, Lydia." I only held the torch. Past that, in the corner office, I found Oliver hunched over a computer, typing. His fingers moved fast, his focus sharp. "Homework?" I asked. He looked up, grinning. "Not exactly. I'm editing a video for the Foundation's site. It's about you." I raised an eyebrow. "About me?" He nodded. "About truth. About how you taught me to film it." His screen showed slow clips of the bay, the garden, my hands turning pages, all layered with his soft narration. "Light remembers where it has been." The line stopped me for a moment. Simple, true. I rested a hand on his shoulder. "Keep that sentence," I said. "It's better than anything I've written." When I stepped back outside, the sunlight had turned gold again, spilling across the sidewalk, filling the letters on the sign until they glowed. Golden Grace Foundation. It looked alive. A couple passed by, paused to read the inscription on the wall. For those who were silenced and those who refused to stay so. They smiled. Maybe they understood. Maybe they didn't. It didn't matter. The words were there. They'd outlast explanation. Across the street, the cafe door opened, and the same reporter from the launch day waved. "Mrs. Hartman, the community center quoted you this morning. Justice isn't revenge. It's memory written down properly. They're calling it the quote of the year." I smiled faintly. "It was never meant to be a quote," I said. "It was just how I learned to breathe again." I walked toward the edge of the pier, coat pulled close against the wind. The tide was higher than yesterday, brighter, as if the bay itself had absorbed the light of every story told here. I stopped at the end, resting my hands on the rail. Somewhere behind me, the foundation door closed gently. You can tell when a chapter ends, not by its silence, but by its clarity. The gulls circled above, their wings cutting across the sun. I closed my eyes. The warmth on my face felt like an answer to a question I no longer needed to ask. People will forget the dates, they'll forget the documents, but maybe, just maybe, they'll remember the quiet. How a woman once sold her house, recorded the truth, and turned pain into something golden. Light doesn't belong to anyone, it just finds its way back. I opened my eyes. The bay shone like a blank page waiting for someone else to write on. I smiled. The story was safe now. It didn't need me to tell it anymore. Then I turned toward the city, toward the life still unfolding, each step marking not an ending, but a continuation. Behind me, the water shimmered, and the light, true to its promise, followed. Dawn returned softer the next day. The sky opened wide, thin clouds trailing like brushstrokes across pale blue. I stood at the window of my small apartment above the harbor. No mansion, no servants, just a table, 2 chairs, and peace that didn't need witnesses. The kettle whistled faintly from the kitchen. I poured tea into a white cup, steam curling toward the light. For the first time in years, the scent wasn't tainted by fear. It was only tea. The world outside moved on. The news cycle had already replaced my story with new scandals, new faces. That was fine. Justice doesn't need an audience. It only needs memory. The Golden Grace Foundation was running smoothly under Elaine's supervision now. She sent me a message last night. 5 new cases opened, 3 already under review. I smiled. Quiet progress always sounds like paperwork. Oliver had sent a short video too. His school project, The Power of Recording. It opened with the bay at sunset, and his voice narrating, calm and steady. When we listen, we protect. When we record, we remember. The teacher gave him an A. He didn't care about the grade. He cared about the truth. He got that from me. I walked out onto the balcony. The wind was cool, brushing against my cheek like something familiar. Below, fishing boats were leaving the dock one by one, their motors soft, their wakes thin silver lines that disappeared as quickly as they were made. Time always erases its footprints, but evidence, real evidence, stays. It becomes legacy. On the small table beside me sat a stack of letters from strangers, survivors, children of victims, caregivers who'd seen too much. Every envelope carried the same message in different words. You made us feel seen. I didn't answer them all. Some stories didn't need replies, only acknowledgement. I placed my hand over the stack, whispered a quiet promise. We're not invisible anymore. The church bells rang from the hill above town, slow, measured, patient. I counted each toll until the air settled again. Then I looked toward the horizon. The light was gold now, climbing over the water like it always had, as if nothing terrible had ever happened here. That's the strange mercy of nature. It forgets on our behalf. I sat down, folded my hands around the teacup, and let the warmth soak into my fingers. My reflection rippled faintly in the glass door beside me, older, steadier, no longer afraid of being small. Small things endure because they bend. Sometimes I still hear echoes of that old house, the ticking clock, the creak of the stairs, Vanessa's voice whispering control disguised as care. They come less often now, and when they do, I don't flinch. I just listen, the way one listens to a storm that's already passed. Every life has a before and an after. Mine divided somewhere between fear and evidence, between being watched and watching, between silence and voice. The difference is not in what happened, but in who tells it. I finished my tea, placed the cup on the railing, and stood. The sea stretched open below me, endless and forgiving. A gull cried overhead, sharp, lonely, free. I whispered softly, "You can rest now. You can rest." The wind answered with a single sweep across the water, scattering the reflection into light. I turned back toward the room, the papers on my desk waiting, the sun already touching the floor through the window. I didn't need to write another statement. The world would write the rest. And when they do, I hope they remember this much. Justice doesn't roar. It endures, like the tide, like the wind, like light returning after a long storm.